Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Ukraine Military History Podcast. This is the second in a two-part series that our military analyst Rob Lee, Dima Putiata, recorded with a special guest Ryan O'Leary on the dismissal of Mykhailo Fedorov, the defense minister, and the impact that's having on the Ukrainian armed forces, the war effort, and civil society's reaction to it. I'm Sam Cook, the founder of the Ukraine Military History Institute and the co-host here of the Ukraine Military History Podcast, where we examine Ukrainian military history from the very beginning all the way up until the current war against Russia. So this second of a two-part series picks up where we left off at the beginning, where Rob, Ryan, and Dima go through and start listing the specific complaints and problems that Mykhailo Fedorov listed in his very explosive and widely covered and shared exit press conference, where he talks about the problems, frankly, that he was facing in reforming the Ministry of Defense, the Armed Forces of Ukraine, and the obstacles as he sees it with his commander-in-chief that he was working with, General Alexander Syrskyi. So this is an in-depth discussion of those problems. They were going to go through all 11 of the things that Mykhailo Fedorov listed, but I don't think they got through all of them because they go into so much detail and discussion on each one of the points. But it's going to be highly educational and a perspective that they're channeling from their extensive context inside the armed forces, both Dima and Ryan having served, Dima having left service, Ryan still in, and Rob, of course, being incredibly close to a number of soldiers and commanders in the Ukrainian armed forces as he lives here. So enjoy the second of this two-part series on this hugely important historical event in today's war against Russia.
I'm going to go through the list. So Fedorov, in his speech yesterday, it's a very interesting speech where he kind of laid out his entire view of everything that's been happening. He laid bare the conflict he had with Syrskyi on a variety of issues. But he said after the first month in office, he identified 11 problems that he's been kind of trying to solve. And I think it's a good roadmap to discuss the current issues in the Ukrainian military and kind of, to what extent we agree or disagree with it. So I'm going to go through the list and let's have a discussion about this, okay?
Full sound.
Yes, let's keep the language PG.
I've been waiting for this.
I know you have.
At least on the foreigner part.
Yes. All right, number one. Ukraine's armed forces are fighting at the tactical level, although increasingly at the operational level too. Still fundamentally, we're fighting at the tactical level.
I don't agree with it. I mean,
it's yes and no. In the same time.
Yes, it's at a tactical level, but no, it's not like a cohesive tactical level. It should be like what he should say, and maybe it's just a language thing that's different, but each unit fights as an independent tactical level. There's no cohesion on this front line. Like, look, nobody owns depth. Nobody owns target prioritization. There's no planning between multiple brigades. It's slowly changing because of the core structure, somewhat. If the core has all the brigades in a line.
Yes.
But like at the tactical level, okay, yeah, he's correct. But the problem is, if you look at it one step further, it's each unit is fighting their own battle at the tactical level. There's no cohesive, tactical front when it comes to like, you have one brigade here that's fighting their own little sector, their own little king of the castle. You have another one fighting here, same setup, king of the castle. They stick with their lanes. They don't really organize well with the other ones. Like drones, it's helped a little bit, but it's also not helped. Like, look, if Russia launched 100 or 20 armored vehicle assault tomorrow in one area, obviously this sector is going to pivot a little bit to hit it. But like outside of that, to get the E-balls or whatever, there's no real, like we're fighting at a tactical level, but an independent tactical level. There's no cohesion.
Yeah, and as to this statement, I need to disagree because from my perspective, it seems like that he is trying to use this SMM, his former experience, and trying to put his hands into this middle strike campaign. Because I know that military, they be planning this before Fedorov arrived to the office, and it's up to them that we have this campaign. Mm-hmm. Yes, he prioritized these drones, which is, I'm thankful for that, which is good. But our military, our definitely not beloved general staff and some generals outside of this kind of stuff, they were thinking about that, but they just needed these capabilities. Of course, it's very hard. It's really extremely hard to tell some colonel or whoever or higher that you need to adopt drones and use them. It's for every country, not only for Ukraine.
Right.
But as Ryan mentioned about this tactical level, well, I don't want to ruin someone's illusion about Unmanned System Forces Brigade, so I will try to...
No, go for it. It's your podcast.
Total different topic. So I will be diplomatic, but I was a part of this forces for a year, and it was in a high position. And I would like to see how to fight in a tactical level with drones against Russians. But instead of that, the only thing that SBS told me is that we need to form our reports in PDF instead of docs. So I wasn't told, for example, how to fight Russian artillery.
Yeah.
How to fight against Russian drone operators. The only thing I was told, kill infantry.
Yeah.
You're not efficient because you're killing Russian drone operators with your freaking bombers. Kill infantry on a regular basis. Why the heck you are killing Ural trucks? You don't need to kill infantry.
So I heard an anecdote recently that one Unmanned System Forces unit, which was been killing trucks at like 100 kilometers with darts. That the pilots had some success. They knocked out a bunch of trucks at operational depth. It was like a very good operation. And then the commander saw this and said, "Why are you hitting things at 100 kilometers? You can hit things at the zero line and get lots of points."
Yes,
and they're basically rebuked
it's right now. It's not 6 months ago. It's right now.
Yes.
And another example, I know one battalion under SBS forces that they decided to target Russian drone operators' positions, which is absolutely right. Because I'm sorry, if you say that drones are killing 90% of everything, why the heck you are not killing drone operators?
Yeah.
So, but yeah, it's about tactics, strategy, and etc. So they put all the attention to destroy these drone operator positions, and they've been, how to say it diplomatically, punished for what they are doing. And they became not very... they appeared to be not in good position in front of the SBS forces commander. But in some period of time, they managed to find a place under the sun and were allowed to do this.
So E points would be a longer discussion.
Yeah, I mean, like...
I don't want to dive into it. There'll be a separate podcast. There's a lot of interesting things about it. I would say this is also one area where there's pluses and minuses to it. This is one area where I think, again, I have a very positive view of Fedorov in general. I think he's been a good Minister of Defense. I think he did a very good job managing digital transformation. The E-point system, my criticism of it is that when you assign points for certain targets, you are centralizing targeting decisions, right? So is not a decentralized choice. You are incentivizing from Kyiv what targets we want you to hit at the tactical level. But the commanders at tactical level have to make choices on their own. Because they will know, here's my problem. My problem is artillery. My problem is drones, it's infantry, whatever it is. They need to go after the targets they think are the best. The E-point system creates different incentives. And the incentives, every part of the front line will be different. I mean, again, the targeting choice should be different. You need decentralized things. So on one hand, you centralize this. The benefit, though, I'd say is, I think Brave One Marketplace, it has an interesting way of decentralizing procurement choices because units can say, here's what we need on our part of the front line. We need this kind of drone. We like this type of drone, whatever. And it may not be true across the front line, but the unit can then make their own choices enabled by the system. So in some respects, you have a unhealthy centralization, but you also have a useful decentralization. And so my view, again, I have a mixed view. I don't think it makes sense for the militaries. I think it had some benefits here.
The point thing basically measures success by your ranking, not really. And like, what I mean by that is like your point level. Obviously, the more points you have, the higher you are on the chart. Like, you know, SBS is always like, hey, or whatever, 412, 414 is like, hey, we're number one. We have 200,000 points this week. But that's not a good way to measure success. Success should be measured like, what did you change at the tactical level for your sector? Right. And I think the whole idea was a good thing, but like, again, like you're saying, you centralize the decision-making on targeting, whereas in reality, success should be like, look, you know, each month the sector commander, whatever, for Kharkiv should submit a document saying, hey, this is what we're targeting this month. And then at the end of the month, instead of tallying up all the points every week, at the end of the month, you say, okay, let's see your results. And then there should be a report that says, hey, we hit, 5,000 field trucks. This is what it did to our front line. This is the success we had, like the follow-on success with our infantry or whatever. But we're not doing that. It's just, hey, you killed 500 dudes in Kursk yesterday. Good job. Here's a bunch of points.
So I do know I've talked to some commanders about this, and they say, look, we make targeting choices not based on E-points. We do it based on what we need to do. E-points is fine, but it's not the priority. When that's the case, I think it works out fine. Where it's okay, here's what we're going to get some points. We can use it for buying things we need. It's decentralized. We're still going after this focus. The problem is, okay, if you're the battle space owner, brigade or corps, so on, if you lose territory, you're going to get blamed for that, right? So that always is going to be usually the priority. If you're an unmanned forces unit, the issue, they're not tasked with holding territory. So they're not responsible for holding the front line, in which case these incentives become stronger. And in some cases, some commanders say, where are we in the rankings? This is what matters to me because it's a tangible thing. It's seen by everyone. When that becomes the case, then it leads to bad incentives. I think it's okay as long as you understand holding the front line is a priority, protecting the lives of your infantrymen is a priority. This is an additional thing, which is fine, but it's not the main priority.
I don't want to talk a lot about E-points because, as I said, it's
sore subject.
It's very painful, first of all, and secondly, it's literally 2 hours conversation.
How many infantry did you kill?
Not that much, and I'm proud of that, to be honest, having all the resources I had. You said that he accused general staff because fighting at tactical level, right?
Not general staff. He said the armed forces in general are just
okay. But who created E-point system?
I think it was Ryan, right?
No, Fedorov.
Yeah.
Okay, if Fedorov created E-point system, but he's saying right now that army fights at a tactical level. Why, for years, we had the highest points for that infantry? But it's like let's imagine 12 points for that Russian, 5 points for Ural truck, for example. That was kinda approximately the ratio. So if you put all the points to infantry that are fighting at tactical level, why are you talking right now?
Right.
That army is fighting at tactical level.
Right.
Man, we went after, so in 24, we spent a week destroying Starlinks and got like 0 point, barely any points.
Yeah.
And then we got our asses ripped for it. And it was like we hit over 100 Starlinks in like a 2 kilometer wide section, just obliterated Starlinks every time. And we got yelled at for it. So I think the point thing is an issue. But this is like one of those valid criticisms on Fedorov too, and like his background. Like, some of your general staff or upper leadership are like, well, Fedorov doesn't have military background at all. That's one of his problems. And like, that is true to a certain extent. Like some of his ideas just don't work as how you want to implement it. I think it was a good idea to try to incentivize effectiveness because look, in 2023-24, you might have some units at like 2 to 5% hit rates with drones. Yeah. Look, we in 2023 we were trying to fly drones around our little base HQ to figure out how to fly them because back then we didn't have training. But now there's no reason any drone unit should have like a 10% effective rate.
So I think if I understand it correctly, I think the reason they can't have E-points in the first place was when they created drone line, they want to determine who are the most efficient, effective drone units. They did so by having a point system. They then found those 5 and they elevated those 5 and tried to make it to an operational unit. Part of the drone line development, which worked and then kind of didn't work, initially was part of the ground forces. Right, so initially it was we're going to create a kind of structure above the maneuver brigade because at this point we didn't have corps, right? So you didn't have anything above brigades. You create some kind of drone unit that is above the maneuver brigade that can operate at greater depth from the front line, ideally, and then they'll back up brigades on the front line. And that was initially, and it happened on Drapati when he was Land Force commander. The initial idea I think was good. When those units went to unmanned forces, they no longer were tied to the battle space owner, and that created some of the problems. But I won't belabor this too much. I would say there is still an issue of coordination at tactical level and operational as well. Middle strike is a very promising direction. It's not fully clear to me, maybe you guys have a different idea, whether or not all the units doing middle strike are actually coordinating their campaigns.
Doubtful.
Because and you have a lot of, right now, okay, you have Ames's forces doing middle strike. So first center, you've got Magyar's brigade, you've got Nemesis, a few other ones doing it, K2, so on. You've got Alpha is doing it. You have Hor is doing it. You have
Omega.
National Guard Omega, and then you have corps, right? You have Azov Corps, Third Corps.
Yeah.
Look, my view is that the corps should have this capability. It's good that corps have operational
Sure.
strike capabilities. It's a nice thing corps have high Mars now too, so they've got something beyond this. But it's not clear to me that these are all coordinated. You have different units doing some of this. Oh, so assault regiments too have this.
I think the Azov Sea and the Black Sea stuff that SBS is doing now is probably coordinated. But when it comes to like you can tell it's not coordinated. Like, look.
Well, certainly the strikes on tankers are definitely coordinated. The Crimea campaign is definitely coordinated.
But when it comes to like what Azov did, they smacked a bunch of stuff in Mariupol. Like, not even really their sector. Like, I mean, I don't think it's really. I would almost bet that it's not coordinated at a decent level. It's probably like, look, every one of these drone units is now getting Hornets, Darts, Ram, whatever, 20 other different types. And it's like now they have the capabilities, they're going to go use it. Doesn't necessarily translate to like a planned out thing like, hey, today we're going to strike every fuel truck in this sector, or we're going to all the units in this sector are going to focus on this one road to basically deny movement. I don't think it's being done like that. You probably have some battalions and brigades like doing it this way, where like, there's communication, horizontal but not vertical.
Yeah, I mean, I know so Azov Corps, at the core level you have units with Hornets. At the brigade level you have it too, and they are coordinating what levels we operate at. Azov had a very clear perspective of what they want to achieve, and so they are executing it themselves. Part of this comes back to too. Azov worked with perennial autonomy early on, the Hornet, and so they developed, they made the Hornet much better, and so they got a lot of them because they coordinated this company for a long time. Some units worked with Firepoint, so they have a lot of FP2s. It becomes kind of a ad hoc thing where it depends what company you work with, which drone you get, and what capability you have.
I don't think they're really coordinating to I think all of them are like, look, this is the area we're going to hit, but like I don't think like Azov is saying, hey, 3rd Assault Brigade, we're going to deny this road. You should help deny this road.
Knowing their relationship, definitely.
But I mean, like, bad example using those two. But like, you know what I mean? Like, I don't think whatever 93rd and 59th Brigade are saying, hey, look, we're gonna 59's
they're
gonna be
not
like,
near each other at all though.
well, I'm just two random units. I'm just saying, like, look, nobody's saying like
of course not coordinated. The opposite of the front line.
whatever, two units near each other. One's gonna be like hitting this road. They're not saying, hey, we're taking out this road. Hit the new ones when they go down the next road. Like, I don't think
most likely no.
there might be some teams that talk to each other, but there's no
as it
upper
usually
leadership.
happens. And what I really don't like right now is that we give this possibilities to strike 150 kilometers deep to maneuver brigades, which for me absolutely makes zero sense. For example, NGU Spartan Brigade operating Hornets, fine. Striking somewhere 150 kilometers from the front line, not fine. The said Assault Brigade having a quite decent UAS regiment that was made to support Army Corps at operation tactical level, is using Hornets and striking somewhere like 120 kilometers from the front line. The question is why? Where it will lead to? It literally makes no sense because it's decision about here and right now, without thinking about the future and how you wanna deploy your forces.
I think there could be an argument to be made though, like, so if I take a deep strike drone that can go 1,000 kilometers with 100 kilogram payload because it has 80 liters of fuel, if I'm going to go 300 kilometers, I can now run a 200 kilogram payload or 300 kilogram payload. So I think there is a reason to have the deep strike, the large platform drones in these units, but I think they also need to be told, like, hey, look, just because you have a freaking whatever FP2, don't launch at 500 kilometers, increase your payload weight, decrease your fuel, hit at your depth.
Yes,
don't worry about Alabuga or whatever.
But this is under Army Corps command. It's not like for maneuver brigade or maneuver battalion. Oh, I'm fighting here right now. Here's my area responsibility. Let me strike Luhansk. What's the point?
That's what I mean though. They should be able to have these larger platforms, but they should be told, hey,
absolutely.
This is your depth. Don't go past it unless it's like some general like.
Yeah, it should be. The main thing here is that responsibility should be divided.
Yeah,
but I would say Spartan Brigade is not operating with the rest of the corps. And so the Hornets are getting sent to the corps distributes to the brigades, and you've got Spartan on their own with the rest of the corps away from Spartan. And so, okay. No, it's okay.
But like, yeah, I think having the assets everywhere is good, but they should, like, there's no reason a combat brigade should be launching 200 kilometers deep, 300.
No, at all.
Okay, number 2. We're going to keep getting through these, all right? He tells us the core system. He says the core system is not yet fully taken shape. We have corps that are successful and advance every month and do not lose territory. We have corps with the commanders replaced every month. There are corps that have developed their own school of thought and philosophy. There are corps, we do not know how many brigades they have or what is happening inside of them. Everything depends on organization, but there are corps do not distribute all the resources internally.
I think that's like a very generic statement. And again, this goes back to not being military. Like, look, this idea that some corps aren't losing ground. Okay, cool. Like, if there's a corps in charge of Sumy and Chernihiv, they're probably not going to lose ground. Whereas if you're in like Zaporizhia or Pokros sector, like you could be the best corps in Ukraine, you're going to lose territory in that just because of the pressure. So I don't think he's taking into account what the operational tempo is in certain sectors versus others. I think he's right that there's still work to be done on the corps level. I think the corps was a decent idea. Bravo to everyone that was like finally implementing this. But I think there's still room for improvement. Like transitioning over to a corps structure when you have units based everywhere all over Ukraine, it was going to be a hard thing to do. I think they've, I don't know, 50% of the way there. Is that what do you think?
I mean, first of all, for me, it's a little bit weird statement, to be honest.
Okay.
And I definitely will never ever, have my opinion for Syrskyi, but he said it publicly, and not only him, that core reform has a couple of, let's say, sorry, forgot the right word, a couple of echelons. The first one, we create corps. We understand, okay, this corps will have these brigades and these opportunities.
Right.
So this will be the area of responsibility of the corps. The second phase. The second phase will be, we will take this brigade from here and move it to its core command. But this is the hardest thing here. Because, for example, if you have rapid forces, I mean, they are rapid and they were made to do maneuvers and to make a breakthrough. So is it okay to give them a paddle from line where they should defend? No, I think this is the forces for, for the reserve, where you use them in some directions where you need to maybe to improve your situation, to make it better, or to break through. And talking about having every corps under every corps that will have their own brigades, yeah, absolutely true, but it requires a lot of time. Right. And in some cases, we had, unfortunately, way too much examples when during the rotation, Russia knew about that, and they made significant advance. Right. This is how we lost Turets, yes. Kind of risk. A big city. Yeah. And it happened so fast that people even didn't understand what happened. So...
Yeah, I think it's like 50% of the way done. But like it's a huge endeavor to be done. Like, I mean, you have to understand that you're now staffing the corps level too. So, this brigade commander gets pushed up, this battalion commander gets pushed up. So like also, each one of these levels has to learn.
And plus the core assets are not fully established.
Yeah, so that's I think it's 50% there.
So the core reform, that's a pre-federal reform, began in 2025, right, early on. Ukraine is a brigade-style military, which has some benefits, but the big detraction is you have nothing above that. And so you don't have division assets, you don't have army assets, so on. And so especially the Russians have divisions, they have armies, they have assets at higher levels, including fires assets, EW, and Ukrainian brigades just lack that. And they lack the support. So it's always a big issue.
Did they ever give a timeline on this? This might be another one of those things where when they did this, if they just said, hey, 2025, we're going to build out corps, division, whatever. Well, we want it done by 2028.
I mean, I'm not sure that they have some kind of deadline because it's hard to predict and plan. But maybe yes.
Steps.
Well, I think the corps, they're established and they took over from OTUs. OTUs got disbanded last year. The OSUV got disbanded too. So you now have operational commands. You've got with the Joint Forces Command under Drupadi, which is Operational Command North. You've got East under Nikolyuk, and you got South. Right, it kind of control the front line essentially. The core reform, I think, has been positive. Brigade commanders have said they think it's better. the OTU was a temporary structure. The commanders were temporary. The staff was temporary. And all the brigades underneath them were just attached brigades. And so like they didn't care long term about the development of those brigades. The Corps reform is very haphazard because, as you said, okay, Third Corps is a good example. Third Corps, they had the brigades basically there next to the Third Assault Brigade. And so Biletsky was given the brigades to the left and right of the Third Assault Brigade, said, okay, you have a cohesive front line, you have a huge front line, we're going to give you. And then when he took over, he started replacing brigade commanders. He started kind of spreading out the quality from Third Assault Brigade across the Corps. He also set up, Kraken came over from Hor, and so he could set up his own UAV regiment pretty quickly. Also for staff, he had more volunteers, so quality, do the staff work, do all that kind of things, right? So a lot of the Corps level assets, Third Corps could set up faster than other corps. Also, the benefit of just being all together, like, Azov, for example, initially the Corps was, south of Konstaha, you had the brigade there, you had brigades up in Kupiansk, all over the place, right?
Yep.
Now they're trying to consolidate in Dovopilia, and like many of them are there now. Things are working better as they operate as a corps. But then you have the regular kind of army corps, right? They're like mechanized brigades under them. They're not, Azov, Hartia, 3rd are unique corps. Then you've got, rapid response, 7th and 8th that are kind of unique as well. Marine Corps is not operating as a corps, and that's actually a big problem. They need to put all the Marine brigades together because the brigades don't get treated as well as they should be by their commanders, and they identify as a problem. But for the other kind of corps, very mixed quality, right? They don't necessarily have the staffs, they don't necessarily have UAV regiments, they don't necessarily have all the other kind of things, and so the quality it's going to be more difficult, essentially. So my view is Corps reform is a good reform. It's already had positive dynamics. You see very good success in some directions. Other areas, it's still difficult. But look, it's a reform happening during wartime. It's always going to be difficult, right? It's not peacetime, and so it's never going to be perfect. So anyway, I think it's a good development.
Yeah, I don't think there's really much criticism there. There should have been, because if anyone thought the Corps was going to be done in a year, out of reality.
Yeah, but like they're operating. You see, again, Le Mans. It is a reason why Le Mans is better now than it was a year ago, right? Third Corps is taking over. They have responsibility, and the cooperation is better. So again, I think it's a good idea. It's true, it's still a problem, and you still need to improve it. I think what needs to happen is at the MOD level, you need to look at the corps that are not the special corps and say, how can we bring these corps up to the level of 3rd, 2nd, 1st, so on, right? Yep. And also, of course, 1st, 2nd, 3rd, they have different political connections. They have huge PR component. They get more volunteers. They have economic support. They have a lot of things that, are not just normal, essentially. So, but okay, let's move to the third one. Third one, it's kind of the same topic. Brigades and corps have been fragmented. There are brigades that cannot even determine how many battalions they have. Battalions pulled out of one brigade, thrown into another. It's impossible to build a management system under conditions like these.
What does it mean? Brigades don't know how many battalions.
Everyone knows how many battalions they have.
Okay,
I know, but
I'm taking it from
the
article.
But it's.
I think he's talking about piecemeal deployment of units. I think that's the problem.
Which, that's been a problem since 2022.
Yes.
But the Corps is getting it better.
Yes.
And again, it just takes time. When the Corps, as the Corps matures more and more, you'll see the piecemeal stuff hopefully dropping lower and lower. Obviously, like you pointed out, there are certain corps that are going to need maybe some more help than others. Mm-hmm. And again, like you said, the MOD should identify the ones that are having some issues, and then they should throw their weight behind it to make sure that they catch up with the other ones. Mm-hmm. But as far as what he's talking about there, I disagree with him.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's improving.
So, I remember when Drapati took over a year ago, or more than that, that was one of his big focuses, less piecemeal deployments, because what had happened before this, again, partially because of the brigade style structure, where you didn't have enough manpower, brigades didn't rotate out the front line, and so if you have problems somewhere, the only way to respond to it, you don't have reserves you can send there, so you have to pull from a brigade on a different part of the front line where it's safer, and you'd pull a battalion, you'd pull a company, whatever, and it created huge problems because first off, it's you're not operating under your actual command. If you have a company gets sent somewhere else, they don't know who this brigade is. They don't know the left and right unit. They don't have any experience working with these guys. Mm-hmm. If you get attached to a different brigade, if you're a brigade commander and your brigade has 50% strength, right, and you get 2 new battalions, you are going to use those 2 battalions aggressively because you want to save your other battalions that are yours long term, and you got to use these guys in a different way, right? So the piecemeal deployment system was a huge problem. It still is a problem, less so now than it used to be. But look, this is because Ukraine has had a manpower problem since 2023. Ukraine responded in a bunch of ways. There are often short-term stopgap measures that had a lot of long-term problems.
Yeah.
This has been an identified issue for a long time. Still a problem. I do think it's a smaller issue now than it used to be. And I do think people have been trying to address it, but it's
like even so before the Corps, you had a bunch of separate battalions too. That was like
rifle battalions.
Yeah, it was like who's actually in charge of the rifle battalion? It was like, well, whose sector are they in? So like I think he's wrong on that. I think the MOD general staff and the Corps level, like they're all doing a good job. It just takes time to move 100 different battalions around to get them in one sector.
Well, I mean, he's saying it's a problem. I don't know if he's
it's been a problem.
I have to watch. Okay, this is coming from an article.
Improvement.
I haven't watched the video, so I'm gonna take it.
But it's improving. That's the thing. The thing is it's getting a lot better than it was, and is only going to continue to improve. Like that's one thing I don't think the leadership can mess up at this point, because like they've already started moving a lot of it. Like you said, you have 3rd Assault Corps now in one area. Azov's getting in their own area. So like I don't think they can really mess it up again.
But I will make another point here. So the assault regiments, because we know they're used piecemeal. So Scala is unlike...
Which should probably stop too. Put one in the north, east, and south.
But I'd say so. I mean, I know Scala earlier in the war, you might have units on 8 parts of the front line, right? It is impossible for a regiment to operate that way. Because again, the regiment's got a UAV battalion. I think it's 2 now. How can a UAV battalion support 9 infantry battalions elsewhere? They can't.
But the question is, if the Corps gets better and all the units get put in the right spots, will that happen with the assault regiments?
Sure. But I would say is, in some respects, the development of the assault regiments where Syrskyi prioritized them, so we're going to man them well, equip them well, so on, these are going to be my QRF for anything. Anything goes wrong, they get sent there. In some ways, that reduced the need for piecemeal deployment from regular brigades. Because instead of a brigade pulling a battalion, you say, no, the assault units are the ones who are going to do all of this. They're going to get used very heavily. They're going to go to the worst places. And they're also going to be the priority for manpower, everything else, right? And so again, my view is that I have a mixed view of the assault concept. I think there's good reasons for it. I think maybe it was the right option. Maybe I'm not fully sure. But I do think in some respects this may have reduced the problem with piecemeal deployment from regular brigades. But as you said, and this is one of the important things this year, I think. The assault regiments, again, they're supposed to do assaults. That's the purpose for them. They're actually used as the QRF, sheet QRF for Syrskyi. So when there's a problem, one part of the front line, okay, Scala Battalion goes here, they plug a gap. You don't have to piecemeal deploy anything else, right? And they're basically defensively, holding an area. The more the assault regiments are holding the front line, the less they can be pulled back and do offensive operations. But if we get to the point this year where the corps can hold the front line more or less on their own, they become kind of autonomous, then you start pulling back the assault regiments, you start consolidating them, and then if you give them time to plan and prepare for an offensive operation, I think you can then better chances for some kind of breach, some kind of offensive operation, and so on. But if it's still battalions every part of the front line, and you have to counterattack, again, when Huliopolye happened in January, when they got redeployed, they got deployed like 1 day's notice, 2 days notice, right? Kharkiv offensive was like 36 hours, I think. It was very, very minimal, right? I think Kharkiv had to get there the same day because it became such of a mess the first day. So when those things happened, it was very difficult response. If the corps can hold things themselves, then you start opening up new opportunities, I think. So
yeah, I think that goes back to if they can get all consolidated in their areas, it should prevent. Like you'll probably still have to have stabilization forces once in a while moving around, but like it should be able to allow consolidation. We'll see. I would assume that's what the ultimate goal is. Like,
okay. Number 4, no one is held accountable for anything.
True.
Responsibility is always pushed down the chain. Someone else is always made to carry the blame. There's always talk and investigation of finding out who is guilty.
True, but I mean,
everyone knows this one. Like, this is like one of those where like everyone from Ukrainians to Westerners understand it. Like, look, and this is another thing where like most Westerners follow the war.
Some Westerners do.
But like this is another thing where it's like, look, a reason Fedorov was good is because he was open about stuff with the Ministry of Defense. And like a lot of this criticism as far as nobody's held accountable, it's true because nobody sees the accountability. Oh, the commander got relieved. Okay, what happened to him? Did he just get relieved, or is he getting criminally charged for something? Or is it, hey, we're not going to charge you criminally because we're in a time of war and it looks bad? So like I think like there's valid arguments there that it's right. Like there is accountability sucks.
Well, this has also been Butusov's main point, I think, for a long time. His big criticism of the military is that for any issue, if something goes wrong, there has to be someone in charge. You are responsible for this. It's your fault this happened. And again, like the U.S. military, so officers are responsible for everything.
Yeah.
And a lot of times, officers get fired for, if you're like a division commander and some big issue happens, it's your fault. You get fired for something. And it may not really be your fault, right? Because junior guys will do something stupid. It's always going to happen to some extent. Maybe you're unlucky and it happens when you're in command. But you need this to be a case because you need to know that when something happens, the blame is going to go to the commander. If you know you're going to get blamed, you have incentive to fix everything. You can never say it's, oh, well, my guy screwed up. It's not my fault. It will always be, no, that's never acceptable. Again, when in the Marines, you can never shirk responsibility. If anything happens in your unit, you will never say, it's not my fault. It's actually someone else's fault. No, it's always your fault. And that mentality is like beaten into us when we're younger. I think that's important. I think it's also important in some cases, certain failures, it's not always clear, okay, who is responsible for this failure? And it can't be a situation where it's like, well, it's kind of multiple people. It needs to be, you need to create a structure where it's, okay, it's very clear, this is your responsibility. If this happens, you're going to be coldly accountable for it.
There's no ownership, honestly. Like the only time anyone's responsible for something is if you lose ground. It doesn't matter if you have 30 cadets or candidates die in basic training. Oh, whoops, but like you lose a bunker in the middle of a blown up village, you're fucked.
Okay.
There is no ownership.
Short answer is yes, absolutely yes, 3 times yes. But it's not only army problem.
Mm-hmm.
It's in general state problem. Because as far as I remember, Zelensky said officially that Fedorov should fix problem with mobilization. In general, he shouldn't, because this is not his responsibility. But it was one of the main topics from the president. So we see that nothing happened. And what? I mean, he is not accused of something, nothing like that.
Right.
So the same issue is here. So yeah, that's true that it happened in the army, but it's happened in the army because it's happened in a higher level in our state in general.
Yeah. So mobilization is, it's kind of pervasive across everything that was talked about this week. So this is one of the official kind of criticisms of Fedorov, you mentioned, that busification is still a problem. There's still an issue with treatment of TSK officers. There was, a thing in Lviv a few weeks ago or maybe 2 guys got attacked. There's still cases where TSK officers, someone's abused people on the street.
And people can kill them. Also, it happens.
So
a lot of violence
outside of military, like this is like there's the repercussions on stuff like this. Like, look, in the U.S., if we had a draft tomorrow, and on live TV, there's a bunch of military MPs beating up some dude in the street, they're immediately going to get in trouble. Like immediate. It's not like, oh, maybe the guy shoved him first. It's like, no, you're fucked. Like you're going to get in trouble. And like I think because there's this delayed reaction in regards to enforcing stuff publicly on whether military officers, TSK guys, grabbing people off the streets, like because there's no real open, nobody sees the results on like what happened with the investigation. Nobody sees anything. Like we're going to see something with the 155,
right,
but that's because they killed 2 civilians, but like when it comes to your average, TSK grabbing some guy off the street, he gets beat in the head with a baton, ends up in a coma for a month, no one's going to see the results on that.
So, mobilization is maybe the most important topic in the war still. It's also difficult because it's a lot of people's responsibilities. It's not one person in particular. And the problems we see today are like, I think it is an impossible task for any new minister of defense to say, fix mobilization.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter who it is. Doesn't matter.
It'll never get perfect.
It could be, and partially because one of the biggest mistakes Ukrainians made in this war is in the beginning of the war, they did not think through, okay, if this war goes 4 or 5 years, how do we maintain human resources? How do we take care of it? You have to have some kind of rotation. That hasn't happened. So, you just demobilize, but everyone else who volunteered at the beginning, or even for you, you've served 4 years, right? Guys get tired, and then you have some people who have not served at all. Some people have served for 5 years. It's a very unfair kind of system. There's never been a rotation. There's not like a system of like, okay, like you'll do 1 year in the rear and you'll come back and serve later on. That's not necessarily happening. It just has not been thought through of what happens as the war keeps going on. It's always been this kind of, okay, we need to survive this month. Let's get to next month. Same with mobilization numbers. Like, hey, we need to get like 30,000 people this month to satisfy our needs, instead of how many people do we need 6 months from now, a year from now, so on. And it's consistently led to just huge problems that kind of it's a vicious circle, right? So one of the things he was saying, yesterday, is that first off, minister doesn't have full responsibility for mobilization, right? It's land forces has responsibility to kill officers. The general staff has a lot of the control for the training centers, what units guys go to, so on. The general staff is pushing guys to assault units. Some of the assault units don't have a great reputation. Some people who hear about bad things about assault units, and something that Fedorov mentioned, is that guys who are getting mobilized, if they hear terrible things about certain assault units, they're going to say, I need to run away. I don't want to serve because I will get beaten or whatever else. The reputation becomes a big issue. So part of it becomes a question of how do you employ units to the front line, right? Are you doing assaults that are unnecessary assaults, right? Are guys getting killed unnecessarily? If that's true, their friends, they tell their friends who are not mobilized, hey, don't come in because you're not going to get treated properly. Quality leaders changes, right? Some brigade commanders very much care about their guys. Some brigade commanders, not as much, right? If you get in one of those units and there's a perception that like your leadership doesn't, value your life enough, that's gonna have an effect on other people who are not serving, whether or not they want to serve.
Well,
right?
it'll have an effect on society in general. But this goes back to the whole thing where the Ukrainian government, Ukrainian military leadership is really reticent on, fixing problems with leadership. And it trickles down to your, civilians, issues with the TISCA. Like, look, if guys are, there should be like an absolute red line. Like if you're a TISCA employee and you start beating dudes with batons and people are getting broken noses, comatose, whatever, like there should be some repercussions for that. Like at the end of the day, somebody who's evading the draft, and I hate draft dodgers or mobilization dodgers, like if you're doing that, like that doesn't mean you should get your ass kicked. It should mean you should be, detained, brought to a center. Obviously, if you're throwing punches at the police, you're going to get roughed up. But like the whole, like, man, like some of the stuff here with people getting broken jaws and like it's just uncalled for.
Well, I mean, also, like, I remember a friend of mine, his brother-in-law, when the war began, he went and signed up. He's like, hey, I'm ready to fight if needed. And they said, hey, we've got enough people, we'll call you when needed. So he went back to his job. He was doing his job. And then like late 2024, he's leaving work and some TISCA guys show up to him. They put a bag over his head and they throw him in the back of a van.
Like that shouldn't
right?
be allowed.
And again, it's just an anecdote, but it's like this guy was fully willing to fight. And it's like, hey, if you just called me, I would have shown up and I would have done my job.
Yeah.
His first aspect of the military is being treated like a cog, where it's you are not a human being. You are not considered valuable. You are just going to get thrown in there. And the rest of his time in the military is like, well, this is it creates really big reputational issues, right? And a lot of the problem now, I think, is that there's been some really bad reputational associations with parts of the military. Some guys are very concerned about joining because they think, oh, I'm going to be used in a really bad way, and it's not all true. Right? It's not everything's a horse, or you have good commanders, you have good units, so on. But the perceptions has been a problem and has not been managed very well.
Yeah, because it hasn't been managed though. Now you see like the stuff in Lviv where, TISCA people are getting assaulted, cars are getting flipped over. Like if they start addressing these problems 3 years ago, you shouldn't like the TISCA guys shouldn't be getting shot. They shouldn't be getting beat up. Right. There should be some respect that goes both ways, but it's eroded in society because nothing was dealt with. And
plus, if the TISCA guys, and it's what when I talk to guys who are serving, they're like, look, we need the TISCA because we need to get replaced at some point. Or the guys who've been serving 4 years, like we need someone to come and replace us. We need someone to man the units with us. If these guys are not doing their jobs, it means guys holding the front line are going to be in a terrible situation. That you need mobilization, you need new people. And the violence against TISCA is not a good thing either. It's something that has to be dealt with. It's just I think for 3 years, the problem was not addressed. It was kind of pretending like this is not a problem. And now, Fedorov came in, he came with some ideas of trying how to fix it. It was always a question to me, can you change this now? 4 years into the war, can you affect it Dima, what's coming to you? What's your take on everything?
Yeah, back to Fedorov's statement, he is right, but that's a little bit manipulation because, as I said, nothing is working here in Ukraine, unfortunately. Sometimes I think that state does not function at all. Sometimes I think that only some small amount of people who care about their country are fighting, and that's why we have still this independence under fire. Because no one has responsibility for nothing, no punishment, nothing at all. So it's not only about army. Army is only a part of the things. So to say that something doesn't work in army, yeah, absolutely true. Same with police, same with ministers, same with the parliament. We kind of officially have parliament, but in general it does not exist because everything is up to the president, whether it's good or bad.
Right.
So how can we accuse army as to that?
No, I mean,
I will say last week, Sunday, I was coming out of a meeting and I got rushed by like, was it three police officers just screaming at me. And like, I was
probably
like,
deservedly.
no, so it was mobilization people.
Yeah, okay.
But I was standing there on the phone and literally like police vehicle slammed on its brakes. They all jumped out. All of them started yelling at me right away. I was like, what the fuck? And then
we started with you trying to not use curse words, and it just got worse.
But I looked at him. I was like, "Zaspokoytsia," like calm down. And I was like, American, and they're like, ah. And I was like, dude, like, but like, I mean, like that, like my first ever, not my first, but like lately, my first like 2026 thing with the Tisco was literally 3 guys bum rushing me as I'm standing on the sidewalk, screaming at me. Like that's not how mobilization should be. Like you shouldn't. If you get out, get aggressive right away, you're going to obviously get aggression in return. Luckily, I'm American, so I was just like, hey, American, leave me alone.
For 4 years, I had a meeting with Titska only once, and it happened literally 2 months ago, maybe less. So they approached me, and they just checked my documents, and we said...
Oh, no, mine were all gung-ho, man.
They just...
If I would have been Ukrainian, I'd probably ended up in the trunk.
And we said, like, okay, bye. And that's it. So,
but I think there's various enforcement standards, and I think they need to fix it. I don't know. Like I don't know. It's 3 years in. How do you fix it now?
But is also a problem. This happens in all militaries. But so some of the guys, if the guys are veterans, if they've already fought, when they mobilize someone now, they might be like, hey, like what I've already done my time. I'm going to treat you like whatever because you should have already fought now, right? And so they might be more aggressive, they might be more, whatever.
But I mean, there should be a standard.
Of course,
if you go beyond that standard.
But what I'll say is, okay, in the U.S. military too, right? When like boots come in, or new enlisted Marines, when they show up to a unit, they don't get treated very well by the senior guys there, right? And it becomes an issue with hazing and so on. That can be a problem in all militaries to some extent, where it's like, oh, I already did this, I'm going to treat the new guys like crap. It's not good. It's not beneficial at all. But it happens elsewhere. I do think that's might be part of it. Is these guys, the new people, like, hey, like I'm gonna rough you up, and because I was treated this way, maybe poorly in the beginning.
But like there's one, so you could advocate hazing in the military units is one thing, but like the public facing side of mobilization should definitely not be super aggressive. Should not be doing like there's one side where somebody on Chris Chaddock is getting pulled into a van. And then there's another side where somebody's at basic training getting fucked.
But these guys are never trained to do this, though, right?
Yeah. Well,
again, and there's always a question like, should police be involved? Should be MPs? Who should be involved in actually mobilizing? But Tisaka officers they're not trained to be like people with a public facing role to actually like really detain people, have police responsibilities. It's not supposed to be that job. Yeah. They're kind of in an impossible position.
Yeah,
right?
I mean,
honestly, I would hate being a Tisaka officer. Because you're gonna walk around, people are not gonna like you because they're gonna identify you as the guy who might take
every day is gonna be a bad day.
Right. There's a reason why a lot of vans, like the vans that drive around, there's a not Tisaka like sticker on those vans.
Very dumb statements because if not Tisaka we would fail.
Yes,
as a country.
Yeah. Absolutely.
But that tells a lot about the IQ of the person.
Like they need the Tisaka, but again, what are the reforms we can do to create a better public image? But like now again, it's 4 years into it. And like now we're at a point where the Tisaka guys don't feel safe trying to grab somebody off the road or detain them. And you're also at the same time where the civilians don't feel safe dealing with the Tisaka. So it's like, how do you reform that? Like 4 years in, and we're going to end up that way with ICE. That's coming in the U.S.
Well, I mean, I think they're just going to get rid of ICE to some extent.
But I mean, like, I mean, like, it's just how do you deal with it now? And I think if they saddle Kamara or the Minister of Interior, whoever the next MOD is, if they saddle him with that and say, hey, you fix this and make him own that, it's going to be a failure just like it is now. Because, again, General Staff, President, Land Forces Command, MOD, there's multiple people with hands in it, and it takes a concerted effort.
And also, it's a
Governance.
Yeah, Dima, as you said, it's a societal issue. It is a society-wide problem about getting enough people to serve, to fight, so on. It has been an issue for 4 years. Anyone who comes in now, it's like, okay, you're the one who's going to get blamed for it, but you don't have full authorization responsibility to actually control it. Because again, it's not the Minister of Defense, it's really General Staff, Land Forces doing it. Even they have significant limitations of what they can and can't do too. And of course, they're all dealing with all the problems that have happened in the last 4 years, and that becomes a whole different kind of
I will say the start should be them just owning up to the issues that consistently are happening and admitting hey, we messed up here. This is what we're doing with this case to fix it.
I think Fedorov did address these things.
He was working on it. But
he
the next one,
this kind of thing.
And this has to be more than the MOD. Like the General Staff should be like, look, we messed up on this. Or Land Forces, like there has to be, somebody has to own up to the issues. If nobody's owning up to the full problems that are being seen every day with like people getting beat up or, broken legs, whatever, then the issue is going to keep going. If society's seeing that like there's progress, people are getting, like things are getting fixed, like nobody's going to like mobilization. They never will. But at least we can make it less painful than it has to be. But the part of that is like you have to own the issues.
Okay, Ryan, let's take it to your area of specialization here.
With foreigners, oh man.
Fedorov said he wanted 30 to 50% of infantrymen or assault unit guys to be foreigners.
Look. So foreigners are the only ones still dumb enough to come here to do assaults. Like, look, if you talk to new guys, they're like, what do you want to do? Oh, you want to be an infantryman? Cool. Man, I've been here 4 years. The minute we talk to a person who wants to join us, they say, I want to do direct action. I'm like, go somewhere else. Look, foreigners typically are more motivated. Like, we don't come here because we have to. Most don't come here for money. Obviously, some do. But even those that come here for money, they're still going to do work, usually. Like, obviously, there's a trope about South Americans being lazy, whatever. Not really true. But, like, the biggest issue Ukraine has with foreigners is they don't have retention. You can recruit 5,000 foreigners a month, but it doesn't matter if after 6 months they all leave, or if 90% of them leave. Because like you're just this revolving door. We recruit 5,000, 4,000 leave.
And I know that's 6 months, 2 months of training, right?
Yeah,
or maybe
so
more.
The biggest thing, and this is a general staff issue, and this is why I say the general staff needs to go and switch it out, is we're in year 4 of the war. They have not once advocated to switch to allow foreigners into Armia Plus, other than just recently under Fedorov. It's still outlawed to do interagency transfers. So land forces cannot transfer to National Guard. National Guard cannot transfer to land forces as a foreigner. We're 4 years into the war. And so I know this firsthand because I'm dealing with this now. And the response from the general staff, and I quote, I kid you not, direct quote, you can either cancel contract and join the National Guard, or you can go AWOL and join them. That was a response from an officer at the general staff. Like, we're year 4 in the war, and if a foreigner wants to transfer, you're telling me I have to cancel contract, which takes 7 to 14 days. And then once my contract's canceled, because we're not involved with the digital side of the military, a foreigner now has to go back to Ternopil or wherever else to do the medical exam, the background check again. So then your SBU and whatever check that you did before doesn't count again. Every 6 months you have to get it over. So you have 14 days for cancellation. Then you have, a week of medical at the VLK, the processing center. And then after that, you have 30 to 60 day waiting on the background check that you just did 6 months prior to get done. So like you could be off contract sitting around Ukraine for 3 months, all because the general staff didn't take the initiative to fix these laws to where foreigners can't transfer. We don't have, like for us to get bonuses. So every year there's a health and welfare bonus. So for health and welfare bonus for him, he logs into Armia Plus, submits the documentation, done. For a foreigner, it's like 5 freaking pieces of paper, has to get stamped by who knows what, like battalion commander, brigade commander, all the way up.
So just short remark, I also was forced to prepare papers, even if I had
But
Army Plus.
But like with Army Plus, a lot of the stuff
yeah,
is
I mean,
easier.
you have this
Your
opportunity.
transfers are digital. You can actually track where the transfers are.
Yeah,
But
sure.
the general staff for 4 years has done very little to keep foreigners' retention high.
Okay, but general staff they have rotated people, so it's not as though it's the
But
same
each
people. The
each
entire time.
one, I mean, but like it's just nobody does anything there. The general staff is very inefficient with foreigners. These are known problems. It's been well known for years. I talk about it every month. So do other foreigners. Like there's literally group chats in regards to this to help other foreigners fix stuff. Our residencies are all messed up. Getting citizenship is never clear. I mean, like it's just there's constant issues, and everybody wants foreigners to come fight, but nobody wants to fix the issues that we're facing. I think it's a pipe dream to figure out if you want even 20% of your infantry to be foreigners, because again, it's just a revolving door. And again, the revolving door isn't because foreigners come here and say we don't want to fight. Majority of it is we come here and we realize how fucked up things are at the general staff level and at your upper leadership, and that we also run into the issues that they're not wanting to fix the problems. And so the biggest issue isn't can you get foreigners to fight, is can you get foreigners to stay on contract, keep retention levels up. Ukrainians, they're stuck on contract. The retention level there is either AWOL or injury or death.
Right.
For foreigners, it's, hey, how can we fix the system so that we're on the same level playing field as Ukrainians, so that guys don't leave contract at 6 months, spend 3 months off contract, sign a new contract, and then 6 months later break that, sign a new contract. So like,
I mean, as you mentioned, you think there should be a ombudsman just for foreigners?
yeah, there should be.
I mean, I think there's, so like they created 2 international legions to be in the war, right? So one HOR, one land forces.
Yep.
Land forces got disbanded. The HOR one is still there. I think, foreigners want to do different things. It's not, they don't all do the same thing.
Correct.
And for a lot of them, a lot of them don't want to do infantry. And if you give them a useful skill, right, they may stick around longer and say, hey, you want to be a vampire pilot? Cool.
I mean, you have to understand, foreigners come over here with a diverse background. Like, look, I've known people that were trained in the U.S. military for geospatial intelligence and analytical work, and they're like, "What do you got? Oh, trench." Foreigners aren't being utilized properly. Like, look, if somebody comes over here and they were a major in the U.S. Army, you should probably look at them for more than here's a shovel, here's a rifle, go sit in a trench. Obviously, they should probably.
I thought you hated American officers. You don't want them digging trenches.
Officers are officers, but I mean, all officers should dig trenches. Good experience.
There you go.
But I think Ukraine wants foreigners, but the problem is they don't want to fix the issues. They don't want to really work with us. They don't want to listen to us. There's zero reason why you don't have a foreigner, whether former officer or former whatever, running a foreign ombudsman for not just American or English speakers, but for Spanish, English, French, the main languages. There should be an ombudsman that, hey, when you sign a contract, here's a card to your military ombudsman. Keep it, save it in your phone. If you have an issue with missing payments, cancellations, vacation, whatever, call this number. And then boom, you're good. Like, man, there's issues where people's family members, like we had a guy whose mother died and he couldn't get 30 days of vacation to go home and visit his mom. So he had to go AWOL, or not visit, but go to the funeral. Right. And like in Ukraine, if your parent dies or something, you get 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks. But like the Ukrainian leadership here consistently says, oh, we want foreigners, we need foreign help. But then when it comes down to doing the actual work and fixing the problems, they're just not doing it. Again, like the biggest issue with the Fedorov stuff and this foreigner stuff is like, look, you can get foreigners, but you need to keep them. A 6-month contract is actually, if we're taking the morality of it, if we're talking like a cost standpoint, it costs Ukraine much more than what they get back for a foreigner to stay 6 months and leave. So like the goal should be like, look, if the current contract lasts 6 months and we're averaging 85% get 6 months and then they quit, then it should be, okay, how can we reduce that 85% to 50% and get them to stay 9 months? And then after that, 12 months. Because like your total cost right now from start to finish for Ukraine is they're not getting their money's worth, because you have 51 days of basic training. Then you have like the 14-day cooling off period after basic training at the unit. And then most units do like another 4 weeks of training. You might go to drone school.
Do they get 4 weeks though of actual?
If you do drone school or like Azov or Third Assault or these other ones.
Some do, but some is still like you get 2 weeks of like adaptation training, and then you're like going to the front.
But then even then at the front, how many actually go at the front when they get there? Like, look, a lot of it is like, okay, next rotation. Okay, well, rotations happen once every 30 days, once every 40, 50. Like you could go on a 6 month.
Allegedly, it's illegal to be there for more than 2 months at a time.
Like it could be illegal, but nobody enforces it because nobody owns it. But at the end of the day, like a person on a 6 month contract might spend a total of 2 weeks to a month at the front and then leave. So now you just invested drone training, basic training, and they're gone.
Well, and this is also one of the issues behind mobilization. The problem is that as manpower got worse, those who are fighting, the burden is worse, right? Fewer rotations, less time to go home. The situation is worse. And so the worse it gets for those guys who are serving, the less people want to get mobilized. They're like, I don't want to go to an undermanned unit because then I'm not going to rotate. I'll be the front line for a long time. No one's coming to get me and all these other issues, right? And so it becomes this like vicious circle.
And the worst part is most foreigners like, look, some will complain.
I'm not saying foreign. I'm saying
I'm saying like, look,
Ukrainians.
if you stick, like some of the guys I have now, if you like one of them spent 62 days in a bunker flying drones.
Mm-hmm.
Like most foreigners, if they get stuck on a position for 30 days, they're going to complain about it. But like, we'll do it again 2 weeks later.
But it's not just about foreigners. I mean, it's, we taught me again. I think manpower is the biggest issue, right? It's the biggest problem. Ukraine has figured out drone stuff quite well. The adaptation cycle will keep happening, but like Ukraine's more innovative than Russia. I think Ukraine defense industry is better than Russia on this side. I think the command and control is better. You get advantages like Starlink. I think better operators. Yeah. The quality of personnel is better. You have a lot of really talented people. So Ukraine has a lot of advantages there. Manpower is still this big one, where Russia has more people. They're insensitive to casualties. We don't know how much more they can sustain, but it could be something. We know that Ukrainian units are very undermanned. And so this is the fundamental issue. I think when Fedorov came in, it was good that his first speech was like, there's 2 million draft dodgers. There's 200,000 people who are AWOL. This is the priority. The problem is that he did not have full responsibility and authority to actually try and address mobilization. So different people have it.
And then the AWOL people, like, but with the unit I'm moving to, if I said, hey, Colonel so-and-so, who's my commander, if I said, hey, I know like 6 AWOL guys, they'll do the infantry side with us, let's sign them up. Well, guess what? Bureaucracy says, screw you. Instead, they have to go through the courts. They have to do all this stuff, and then they might end up in some other unit anyway, even if they volunteer for us.
And this is one of the issues. It's not just about changing the personnel. It's not just the leader, because, again, the system is flawed. It is a highly flawed system. Ukraine has come a long way since 2014. They've come a long way since 2022. But the system itself has a lot of inertia, and bureaucratic inertia is a huge problem. And you can have a guy in charge who identifies the problem, who says, "Here's what we want to do," but affecting change in the system is still very difficult. I mean, even the DoD in the U.S., when Bob Gates took over in like 2006, he tried to get MRAPs to the military as fast as possible, and he had to do some like not illegal, but he had to go around the system because it was so slow to get MRAPs to our guys, and junior enlisted guys are getting killed in unarmored vehicles. Out of a complete failure of our system. And he couldn't fix it himself. Even our system was so unwieldy, the bureaucracy is so difficult to get through. So this is one of the bigger problems, is that I would
argue that the leadership, we've had the same leadership for 3 years in certain spots since 2023. I would argue if they haven't seized the initiative or moved the inertia forward, that maybe it's a time for management change. Because, like, look, we've changed the Ministry of Defense twice now since 2023. Same issues. We've changed multiple staff levels in the Ministry of Defense. We've added, the Technical Research Institute. We've done all this, but we're still having an issue in one section.
But so here, the other issue too is that the statutory authority of the Ministry of Defense is weaker than it is in the U.S.
Correct.
So Secretary Hegseth fires generals whenever he wants to. Right, he's doing that quite frequently. He has the authority to do this, right? And people will complain, but ultimately it's up to him. And even the generals, when they get fired, they say, "This is your authority. Like you're legally allowed to do this," and so on. Fedorov cannot fire generals. He cannot say, "I want to replace Task Force East commander. I cannot replace brigade commanders." That is all in the general staff. The commander-in-chief of the armed forces is General Syrskyi. He has significant authority and responsibilities. And so it becomes a problem where, in the U.S., again, we have civilian control of the military, where Secretary of Defense is clearly in control. The generals are beneath him, and he makes decisions, basically. In the Ukrainian system, you need to get buy-in from both people. It has to be the Minister of Defense and the Commander-in-Chief of the armed forces agree. If they don't agree, then the only person above that is the president. And that's
this goes back to, we've had two ministers of defenses. We've had the same on the other side. If two different people with two different mindsets can't agree with one person on the other side, that's like saying I always have a problem with everyone else, but it's their problem, not mine.
But I would still say it is part of the system. It's not just the personalities. It's that you need to have a minister who is very clearly in charge. Like, everything that happens in the military is your responsibility. Anything goes wrong, I will fire you. That means the minister has to have complete authority to make changes as he sees fit. In this case, Fedorov, in my opinion, is getting blamed for some things, for mobilization, that are not fully in his remit. Yeah. He doesn't have full ability to affect it. And so that blame is a bit unfair. Also, if you want to do reforms, but you don't control the military entirely, well, you can't implement reforms entirely. And the problem, by replacing Fedorov, again, the big issue is it's not that you had to have Fedorov. I think he did well. I think there's a lot of good reasons he was there. The problem is that he's been removed for reasons that are not, very good reasons, as far as I can tell, what was been reported publicly. And you now have, Kamara is taking over. Kamara is a very respected guy, very good leader, so on. If he also butts heads with Syrskyi over reforms, the only person who can fix this is President Zelensky. He's the arbiter. He needs to be focusing on other things, though. And so there's a systemic problem about how the system is kind of set up.
But again, there's one person that's always butting heads that hasn't been changed. That's
approach. But
maybe
forget about him. As I mentioned today, state doesn't work, doesn't function. Parliament doesn't work. Laws, they don't work. No one is responsible for nothing. Everything is rolling around just one person, and this is Ukrainian president. So how can you accuse Syrskyi, Fedorov, or whoever else in something is if the system, as you're saying, does not work.
Right.
And system, it's not one person. Because due to the constitution, we have a parliament presidency country. Mm-hmm. But it doesn't function that way. So can we accuse Fedorov in all of the mistakes or problems? We cannot. Can we accuse Syrskyi? No, we can't, because it's up to the president whether to change him or not. Mm-hmm. It's not up to him. Oh, I'm Syrskyi, I want to stay here for extra 3 years and see the victory.
Right. Well, and look, ultimately, Syrskyi's in his position because he has the trust and confidence of President Zelensky.
I mean, the Kyiv defense and some other stuff, good job, but I don't know, new eyes. That's all I'm for. Swap it out, see what happens.
But I do wonder to some extent, even if you replace them, it's not going to solve these issues.
You would have to put somebody in place that is willing to stick their neck out there, take ownership, and move forward. And I would I'm not going to name anyone, but I have a person I would 100. But you have to, if they swap it out, look, we just changed the Minister of Defense again. Swap out the commander-in-chief with somebody who's willing to take ownership, willing to own the errors, willing to fix the issues, and stick their neck out there and at least try, at least publicly show that they're moving forward. Otherwise, we're just going to get stuck in the same loop. Look, 6 months from now, we'll have another one. Guaranteed. March.
The problem here is that we totally destroyed decentralization inside of our army for the last years. And the system also in the army is rolling around one person.
Right.
And it will be a huge problem if it happens for the next main general of the Ukrainian army to change something. And frankly speaking, I doubt that someone will voluntarily take this role because
I wouldn't.
because everything is destroyed. How can you fix it in 6 months? Ukrainians, soldiers, civilians, whoever, they will ask for instant reforms.
Well, and also, the other discussion is that post-war is going to be an incredibly challenging position because everyone who's fought for 4 or 5 years, not everyone, but vast majority,
going to be hard.
Massive majority of people want to leave. And you have, with a mobilized military, as good as pros and cons. One of the pros is you have a lot of talent from Ukrainian society who are serving, right? IT specialists, all these guys create these drone units who are amazing. they are not going to want to serve in a peacetime military. Many of them, right? They're going to want to get out. They're also they want to monetize their experience, which is not unreasonable either, because guys, very talented people, have not been getting paid much for the last 5 years. They want to have a career. They lost a lot of their life to this. Being the commander of the military after the war, to maintain quality, to maintain discipline, morale, to keep innovating, is going to be very, very difficult. It's going to be another really challenging thing. But look, my view, and I think I'm on the same view of you. I think there are systemic issues. There's bureaucratic problems. There's whole of society problems as part of this war. Because war is a whole of society event. It's not just the military. It's society, waging this war, defending Ukraine. It's hard to just blame certain individuals because there's lots of issues around it. My view is that I think it's unfortunate Fedorov has been replaced. I think he deserved to have more time in place to implement his vision. And again, maybe it succeeds, maybe it doesn't succeed. But I think he had a strategy. He was communicating that publicly. He was open to criticisms. He's open to changing his mind. That's a very one of the best things from a commander. I think he brought in a lot of good ideas, and I think he was forward thinking. Even though I think maybe not everything was the right move.
Yep, I agree with you.
But the biggest thing I think for Ukraine society, he could have been wrong on 80% of it, but the biggest thing was he was open about it. And
he was open. He was open to. I mean, and again, when
I had issues with him too. The whole privatization of foreign recruitment is going to be a shit show. That's basically doing what Russia does in Africa already. It's going to be human rights abuses. It's going to create a bunch of issues for Ukraine.
Depends how it's done, I'd say. But
it's going to be done in a very haphazard way. We both know it.
Yeah, of course.
I'll be the one politically uncorrect and say it's going to be an absolute shit show because it will. And I guarantee within the first month, you're going to have the whatever Argentinian government calling the Ukrainian government saying, what the hell? Why are we getting reports of guys getting, beat up in basic training or locked in this building? And then what's Ukraine going to say? Oh, sorry. You're paying a private company to recruit people for a military. That's literally what Russia does in Africa. And they're going to be told hey, come join the Ukraine military. You can cut down trees in a forest in Western Ukraine. And then in reality, they're going to get here. Here's a shovel. Here's a rifle. Davai. People can say it's not going to happen. It's going to happen. It already does happen. Stupid idea.
This is the reality of the war.
Dima, I'll come back to you. All right, so we had a very explosive week, one of the most dynamic weeks of the war for a long time. A lot of bad laundry was kind of exposed publicly and so on. As a Ukrainian veteran, I guess why don't you kind of conclude and say what is your take on the situation? What is your view going forward? We know the war has kind of developed in a better way the last 6 months. Big questions about, does Russia adapt? What is the winter going to look like? We know the winter's going to probably be difficult. I think the war is going to keep going on for some time, probably. I guess why don't leave the last word to you?
Okay.
Try and wrap this up in a perfect
politically correct model.
Thank you for this great opportunity.
Yeah, exactly.
First of all, as to Fedorov, despite the fact that I'm not 16-year-old girl who has a blind love, I criticize him, and I cannot support anyone with 100% because I truly believe that it shouldn't be like that. Because person who are in charge of something, they need to see criticism of what they're doing, despite even if 9 out of 10 people are telling you that you're doing great. In some cases, at least half of them are lying because they want to be in this trend. Despite the fact that I can be critical in terms of him, I believe that he was, and that's unfortunately, he was the best Minister of Defense. Unfortunately, we didn't have the opportunity to see how the former one, Mykhailo, will show himself. I had some positive takes about him, but still we have is that we have these changes on regular basis, and there is no way that someone can do something good for this short period of time. As to future winter, every year we hear this, this winter is going to be the hardest one.
Mm-hmm.
But in this case, here and right now, I think that it's going to be true. Even if the winter going to be warmer, for example, it's still going to be the worst ones that we ever had, because it seems like that our system is severely damaged.
Yes.
And unfortunately, no one is responsible still for repairing and securing this.
Mm-hmm.
We don't have a strategy, and we don't have a plan how to prepare Kyiv and our country for the winter. While some of our regions, they have this decentralization of energy systems.
Right.
Sometimes, somehow we do not, copy this and do it here in Kyiv. I mean, no one is doing nothing as to that. And right now we don't have so much ballistic strikes against Kyiv, because in a lot of cases it's S-400 and mixed with Iskander-M.
Right.
But the thing is that we also don't see a lot of power jet ground drones, which is ground 3, 4 and ground 5. And right now Russia is capable of producing 200 ground 5 per month and approximately 1,500 ground 3, ground 4. We don't see them being used that much, and I think it tells us a lot that they're preparing for something.
Mm-hmm.
And if you talk about the front line, honestly, I expected to see some operation for our forces. Right now, after what happened was between Fedorov and Syrskyi, I don't know, was it going to happen, but I will say a controversial thing. I hope it will, because we have really golden opportunity.
Yeah.
Russia's somehow failed in some cases with the infiltration, and it would be very bad for us to miss this opportunity. I'm not talking about like a strategic offensive operation like 2023, but still there are some chances for that. And but I believe that despite the fact that Russia somehow will adapt to what right now is happening in terms of jamming the Starlink, in terms of creating, not creating, I would say implementing, because they have this big idea how it should be done of their echeloned counter-UAS system, which will consist of artillery firing our drone positions at tactical level, for example, and with the help of radars, we will jam and intercept different kind of drones, and they will jam Starlink, and so I think they will decrease the amount of our fixed-wing kamikaze drones. So that's why we need to definitely use them right now as much as possible. It would be nice to use them in coordinated strikes with some kind of back idea behind that, not just because it's driving something. Let's destroy it. It's pleasant to see it's burning, but at the same time, better to have something more in your mind. So I think that maybe till the end of the year we will have another Ministry of Defense. Seems like, to be honest, and
third time's a charm.
Yeah, I mean,
fourth time.
So I would rather, despite all of this, frankly speaking, negative things, I remain optimistic so far. We have chances, but it will be crucial to see what Russia will do in terms of recruitment, because in the end of June, they managed to recruit only 20% of what's needed for the unmanned system forces regiment brigades, which is kind of fiasco, to be honest. So what they're doing right now, they're recruiting, or mobilizing, whatever you can call it, young people from Donetsk and Luhansk areas, and doing this quite successfully. And they already have new generations and those occupied territories, which are loyal.
Right.
You cannot say the same about the Zaporizhia area, which is occupied, for example. So they will somehow fix it, but in general, in much broader perspective, to be honest, I don't think that Russia will find a way how to break through, how to change the war, how it goes, and maybe in a year and a half, maybe something like that, we have chances to see drastic changes in terms of hot phase of war.
Yeah, and I think we focused on the negatives today because this is Fedorov came and talked about this, and it was a good opportunity. Important to keep in mind, Russian military has broader problems in the Ukrainian military, right? The issues with lying, centralized decision making, not taking care of their subordinates, right? It's very clear Ukraine is doing better than that. And again, the war is going better than it was a year ago. Russian advances are slow, right? Right on net, I think Ukraine is probably taking more territory right now. We've seen in Liman and the Novopavlovka front. Russia's still advancing in Konstaha. They're still advancing to Kramatorsk. That's still a concern. But definitely compared to last year, advances are slowed. The approach on the battlefield, I think, is not working for them. It's not really achieving what they need. There's talk about mobilization. The recruitment numbers are not sufficient to what they want to achieve. They are scaling up Mrs. forces. It is a big priority, but the quality I don't think is going to be there, and so it's not going to be good enough, I think. So the positive here is that situation on the battlefield is better than it was before. But again, how long can Russia sustain this? That's a hard question, and it's a question of how long can Ukraine sustain it too.
Yeah.
And if it goes, again, we might be in a good period where yes, Ukraine's dominance on like kind of tactical operational for drones. Maybe it gets worse in a year, right? Maybe Russia can just sustain this damage. Maybe it becomes tough for Ukraine. Maybe the deep strikes are increasing Ukraine's side. There is maybe not parity, but certainly way better than it was before. So, there are a lot of positive dynamics, but like one thing it's taught me this war is that every few months things change. Russians will adapt. They are adapting. Garand seekers are becoming a problem. Their own middle strike is happening. So it's something to keep in mind is that, reforms are important, partially because it's always, the better you do means the fewer losses you have, the better Ukraine kind of sustain this war, the better maybe the prospect Ukraine takes back territory. I agree with both of you. I think it is very possible Ukraine takes back more territory. I think it's possible to achieve a tactical breakthrough. Maybe get something operationally significant. I don't know. But I think the possibility is there. And I think the Russians have vulnerabilities.
It's a high possibility too. I would say now is a better time than 2023 was for a breakthrough and exploitation.
Yep.
And if they can do a Kursk type deal, but they plan it for the occupied areas, whether Zaporizhzhia, Donetsk, Luhansk, wherever, I think there is a good chance that not only can they break through, but they can get the ground and then, move, laterally from the breakthrough.
I think if you create a localized superiority of drones, which is achievable, is doable, and you have the right planning and you spend time planning an operation, I think absolutely is doable. I will say I think Syrskyi, there's negatives to say, but the positives.
He can plan.
He led the Kharkiv offensive, right? He led the Kursk. Kursk offensive was a very well executed operation, very good OPSEC. He did find the weak point in the Russian lines, and they broke through, and they created really big issues for Russia.
Yeah.
I have no doubt he's thinking about where's the weak point in the Russian lines. I wouldn't be surprised he identifies them. And I wouldn't be surprised you have good units like, Code 9.2, some SO units that can set conditions that can actually achieve a breach. I think it's very possible. So
just a matter if the politics prevent it or not while the window's open.
It depends on a bunch of things, I'd say, right? But again, my this week, it's a not great week for Ukraine, I'd say. I think there's some, and again, this is my interpretation, but you had this kind of young, innovative Minister of Defense. He's not perfect, but he's kind of moving in a direction where Ukraine wants to be moving in the right direction as a country. And I think he's kind of an analogy for broader things in Ukraine, where we're moving away from our past, we're moving into a high-tech, modern future that's so on. And he kind of represented that to some people. And when he gets removed, there's concern that we're retrenching. We're moving in the wrong direction, not the right direction. But I do think, look, Ukraine has tons of incredibly innovative young people. You have a lot of innovative young commanders. You have brigade commanders who are like 27.
Mm-hmm.
You have a lot of okay. That's not always the best thing.
That's not really good, but yeah. Okay.
Sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't.
But it's like it's guys who've grown up in drone warfare, right?
Mm-hmm.
And there are positives, I think, there. So I see tons of positives in Ukraine in general. As a foreigner who lives here and is just seeing kind of developments, I know a lot of reasons to be optimistic with the future. Mm-hmm. Maybe it's a temporary kind of step back, but I think the direction is kind of positive. And so anyway, I still am relatively optimistic. But I think the big problem for Ukraine is going to be post-war, right? Mm-hmm. I think Russia's having a lot of issues advancing. The really big questions like demographic issues. How do you maintain again, if Russia doesn't collapse and you have a ceasefire, how do you maintain a military long-term with guys who've been serving for 5 years who want to leave? It's a big question, right? There are a lot of other big questions in the future that are going to happen. So Anyway, I think we've been focusing on the negatives. I think there are also positives to keep in mind.
Yeah, there's a bunch of positives, but like sometimes bringing up the positives doesn't fix the negatives.
Well, again,
So, and it's clear on the battlefield. You can see the positives. Like anyone who goes on social media can see, Russian logistics burning all the way from Crimea to the Arctic Circle at this point. Especially recently with the Magyar or the SBS Magyar.
Mm-hmm.
The positives show themselves and they're always public. The negatives aren't always public, and that's the biggest issue.
I mean, look, Syrskyi, right? Syrskyi, all these tankers the last week. I mean, what was it, 130?
Now it's Black Sea
too.
side.
I mean, just again, it is a remarkable development. If you thought about this a year, 2 years ago, that Crimea would be relatively isolated, would not have fuel storage, electricity would be getting knocked off, and then tankers would be destroyed on the way there. It's an incredible development, right? And so,
but I think it shows that between drone planning and ground planning, that there is a way to do an offensive too. Because
100%.
if we're able to launch drones all the way in the Sea of Azov for 7 days straight, obviously there's planning involved in that. It's just can we translate the lessons that we're learning now into an assault or offensive operation to where we can gain ground and then also deny a counteroffensive? I think we'll see. I think we have a good rest of the year for an offensive. I think if we wait until early 27, it might get more difficult again. And then we're going to have to really adjust fire on our drone warfare again. Right now we got the Russians by the balls. We need to either go for it or we need to accept that, hey, our next opportunity might be a year from now. And a year from now, that's a lot of what ifs on our manpower. Politics. But I hope we do an assault soon. We're moving back over to an assault unit, so full send.
All right, Dima, any last words?
Maybe in Ukrainian, I would say.
Okay.
Full send.
I think that Крим або буде українським, або безлюдним, and I think we're moving to this direction, so nothing else so far.
All right.
There's negatives, but I'm happy. I've been here 4 years. This isn't the worst. Fedorov getting replaced. Honestly, my whole thought process is, let's see how the first month goes.
We just skimmed the last one.
Oh, sorry.
And then you jumped.
I like to talk.
I know, we all do. All right, let's wrap it up here. We can talk for a while. We'll bring you back and talk about.
Next time I won't be so negative. I'm just really upset with the foreigner issues.
I mean, we have definitely a lot of topics to discuss, and maybe we will pay 3-4 hours to discuss how to bring maneuver back to divide to different things.
Get a whiteboard, draw things. I don't know, crayons.
Yeah. We'll create big arrows.
I'll put a GoPro on. I'll put a GoPro on. We'll just go do it and hope if I survive, it works.
Yeah, we'll live stream you doing it. That'll be perfect. Yeah.
I mean, we got Starlink
unique.
now.
It's right. It's entirely possible.
I don't know. That might blur the lines on humanity type live streaming assault operations. But
I think it's doable. Probably OPSEC issues, but that's okay. All right. Anyway, let's end it there. Ryan, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, no problem.
All right, it was good conversation.
Hopefully
good
it wasn't too negative.
No, I think it was good. I think it's good to talk through some of the issues. You guys have better perspective because you guys are serving. You guys see a different perspective than other people do. Good to get your take. Good to get a Ukrainian's take on this. Good to get you're going to be Ukrainian at some point. Allegedly.
If the president is sitting in the president's office, okay. Zelensky, if he watches, sign my damn citizenship.
Okay, let's end on that one. Another great edition of Ukrainian Military History Podcast. This one had more curses than normal.
Sorry.
All right, it's okay. But anyway, it was a great episode. Glad to have you guys, talk to you guys, and we'll definitely do it again.
Perfect.
Yep.
Okay. All right, see you guys.
Hello, and thank you for listening to another episode of the Ukraine Military History Podcast. I hope that you enjoyed this episode today. And if you did, please like, comment, and share on wherever you're viewing or listening to this podcast. Whether if you're on YouTube, please leave comments and share and subscribe to our channel. If you're listening to this on the podcast apps, please download us, subscribe to us so you get notified as every new episode when it comes out. It will go straight to your inbox. You can also go to our website, sign up for our email list to be notified of future initiatives of the Ukrainian Military History Institute, future episodes as they come out, and also some events that we run here in Kiev for the community. Borderlands Foundation has some community meetups. So if any of those things are interesting to you, please sign up for our email list. And then finally, this is funded by the Borderlands Group. It's a consultancy that I run that helps Ukrainian foreign companies, military companies, Ukrainian companies that are trying to grow their business, get feedback from their products from frontline units, and develop their products for the battlefield so that they're useful for both Ukraine but also other countries that want to use their military technology products. So if you'd like to learn more about what we do, whether it's getting in touch with Rob or other members of the podcast to write reports or advise you, whether you're a military or government that wants to understand what's going on in the war in Ukraine for your own national security, or if you'd like to work as a military technology company inside Ukraine and learn from and develop your technology here, please go to the Borderlands Group website. Leave us a message. We'll be in touch and see how we can help you learn from and contribute to Ukraine's victory here in this war.